Hi, and welcome to the Starter for 10 podcast. I'm Marnie Karmelita, Artistic Director of 10 Days on the Island, Tasmania's statewide arts festival. Join us as we get to know the creative minds who'll come together to create our festival in 2025. Get to know the person behind the art form, follow the journey of a work as it is created, or spark your own creativity and curiosity as we delve into and around culture. Welcome, Hannah, or should I say thank you for having us.
Thanks for coming.
At your beautiful home and creative workspace. And thank you, as I said, for being our first cab off the ranks for our inaugural podcast. We're really excited to be working with you. I thought I'd read a little bit about you and then we can launch into the questions. Okay. So, Hannah Moloney is based in Nipaluna, Hobart. She's the Tasmanian host for ABC TV's Gardening Australia, a permaculture educator, community worker, designer and best-selling author. She's trained in community cultural development and permaculture and has spent the past 2 decades getting her hands dirty in the garden with community change projects and political and frontline activism. Hannah's most excited when she's working with people and landscapes. This is her happy place and where she is most useful for the world. I really love that. And it does lead straight into the first question I wanted to ask, which is really broadly, where are you from? And as a bit of a guideline, I thought, starting with your parents, can you share with us how you came to your place in the world, this place, and who is around you at the moment?
Oh, such a nice question. So I live in Nipaluna, Hobart, literally to Tasmania, but I am from sunny Queensland in Meanjin, Brisbane. And my parents actually come from Naarm in Melbourne, so they were very transient up until the point I was born. I'm the youngest of 5 kids, so I grew up in the inner city Brisbane on an urban herb nursery that my dad ran there.
Wow.
So we had a very, at the time, very normal, but looking back, a very unique city upbringing because it was very much an urban agricultural home. And so that I deeply appreciate that now. And I guess as soon as I could, I left home and to travel Australia. I was deeply curious about the world. And in that wonderful time of quite a few years of travelling and working and lots of activism and studying community cultural development, I came to Tasmania for the first time. I was like, ooh.
It seems to do that to people, doesn't it?
Yeah, and I just kept coming back, and with my work and travels, I just kept coming back. And eventually my now husband, Anton, and I came back around 11 years ago and with the intention to stay, and we're very settled here now. And so we love Lutruwita, Tasmania. It's incredible island community. There's nowhere else like it. You come here like, oh, this feels different and special. And we're so grateful to be part of quite a unique community of doers. Like Tasmania is like a bunch of doers in every kind of way, and we love being part of that community.
I really agree with you. I feel like there's a sense of innovation and passion and searching, for your kind of reason for life that draw people here.
Yeah, and people give Lutruwita a bit of flack over the years. Like it's like, oh yeah, it's Australia's poor cousin or whatever. But like, there's so much space here, geographically and physically, but also socially to create stuff.
Yeah.
Like it's probably not happening here yet. So I found that like it's just a world of opportunity. I wasn't put off by the lack of opportunity. I was like, no, there's so much scope here.
Yes.
And there's so much talent because people are just very, this is a blanket statement, but I just found like a lot of people are very hands-on with their particular skill, passion, whatever that might be. I was like, wow. And that might be academically or with their hands, but they're really doing the thing. Yeah. All I can see here is opportunity, and I love it.
I agree. I feel like it's a really exciting space with lots of potential and lots of dreams and people chasing their dreams, really. Is this your happy place? Where is your happy place?
Yeah, I am the biggest homebody, Marty. So like I love being out in the world and doing all the things, but when I want to like just rejuvenate and just do what I need to do is like I want to be at home and I'm like between like my gorgeous inside house, but mostly I'm outside. And just like I just can't stop it. Like people go, that's like my form of creativity, I think.
Yes.
It's like I'm just constantly making things in the garden or changing things, or found a new plant, and with my goats. It's just a really happy, ever-changing place for me, and gives me so much happiness. I just I feel so indulgent. I'm like, wow, I can't believe this is my work as well as my life.
How wonderful. It sounds like a canvas, even the way that you're describing changing it. And,
totally.
I guess, you are an artist or a creative in that sense. This is your canvas.
Like more and more I see gardens as a canvas, like the colour palettes, the forms that you can play with. I'm constantly going, oh, what about this colour? Or I need more shape here. And you can just tweak it. And, the downside, it's not really downside. Things take longer to grow, obviously. So you've got to wait 3 years for that form to come to fruition. But it's worth the wait. When it happens, it's like, oh, my God, this is so good.
That's quite a long-term vision to have, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I had to change my brain from going, okay, we're not thinking weeks and months here, we're thinking years and maybe decades. Like we might be here for the rest of our living lives.
Wow.
It's like, what can we do in that time? And that's a really fun thought.
I think it's also a really sustainable way to approach life, which I know is really important to you. But, perhaps if a lot of our thinking across many different sectors and across the board was a little bit longer term, how is this going to look and feel? What's the impact in 20 years or 50 years? Or, that might be something that's a bit more fruitful.
Totally. I'm really passionate about actually multi-generational thinking. So that's beyond my life. I'm like, what will this be when I'm gone? But more broadly, what's the impact that we can have in the world when we're gone? What can live on?
Yes.
And it's not the stuff that we have, it's the work that we do and the stories that we tell. And I think that's really interesting. There's a concept called being a time rebel by a philosopher called Roman Krznaric.
Wow.
And it's a newer term but around some older thinking. And it's basically about intergenerational justice. And so how can I live right now to benefit the people in the next 100, 1,000 years? And so everything I do now, I'm like, how is this going to benefit my children's 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 children?
Yes.
And so on. And so that's quite a political thought, but it's a beautiful, heartwarming thought as well. It's like, what can I give to future generations? And that's a wonderful guiding light.
It's purposeful, isn't it? It's very consciously meaningful, and just automatically makes me think of trees, planting that seed, and you might not see that tree fully formed or fully grown.
It's one of the biggest acts of hope to plant a tree which will take 100 plus years to mature. You're not going to be there, but you do it anyway.
Yes.
I love that.
That is such a gift.
Yeah.
So, talking about your creativity, and it's probably a little bit left of centre maybe. When people think of artists, they probably don't think of permaculture designers and gardeners, but I really see you as quite a visual artist in a way. How did you find your way to this life? You've talked a little bit about your upbringing and that what sounds like a really beautiful herb garden. Yeah. Was that the seed of it?
Well, looking back, absolutely. At the time, I was like, oh, I don't want to do this. Running a herb nursery is a lot of work. So like, I don't want to do this.
Put you off?
But as a young adult, and I was deeply interested and committed to activism in all its forms for social and environmental issues. And then climate change is a big part of that, and climate action. And I'm a creative person. I'm drawn to those types of ways of expressing. So I learned about and studied community cultural development, which is basically using creativity to work with people to create positive change and for whatever that might look like for that community. I was like, oh, that's what I'm on about. So my creativity often does come back to land management and how we interact with land. But along the way, there's been shadow puppetry, there's been giant minerals, there's been live dance, there's anything. Because I actually think we are all inherently creative. And, I don't want to take anything away from people who've been training in amazing art forms.
Yes.
And I think we all have something to contribute.
Yes.
I think there's a really big thing in our culture where it's kind of something that we've been taught that we pay for to enjoy art and something that's outsourced, and that's something you have to buy or purchase to experience. And I push back on that and go, no, we can all contribute something here. And I think that's where people like myself can slide in and go, this is my version and this is how I choose to turn up in the world. And I think creativity is an incredible key to a piece to the puzzle to engaging people meaningfully around some big, potentially tricky conversations for how we are in this world. I'm like, art is the answer, a big part of the answer.
It's the key, isn't it?
If we can really create meaningful experiences, effective conversations, which are based on science and facts and all the things, but engage our hearts, not just our minds. And I think that's really important.
Yeah. I agree with you completely. You know, you affect change through emotion, through feeling, and people really investing emotionally in something. I just want to jump back to shadow puppets, though.
Oh, yeah.
Can you tell me about that?
It's a beautiful blast in the past. So I've lived all over Australia, including in Byron Bay in northern New South Wales. And we worked with a number of artists to do some shadow puppetry with an Indonesian shadow puppet master.
Wow. It's such a strong legacy through Indonesia, isn't it, in terms of that art form?
Yeah, this incredible artist was there, and I was working with them over a period of weeks to on storytelling and then shape making and then performing. And it's just a gorgeous experience. And that's directly through my studies with community culture development, getting to collaborate with different artists of wildly different mediums, but all doing the same thing, which is storytelling to engage people meaningfully. I'm like, that's it. I'm like, this is my jam. I've got this.
That's so incredible, and, you know, has led you to where you are today. I wanted to delve into next, I guess, engaging with people, and I think what you bring to us is a very strong sense through your work of how people are receiving what you're doing and experiencing what you're doing through your work, and the emotions and thoughts and feelings that they're having. And sometimes that doesn't often happen in a dark theatre, for example. You know, it might be hard for a playwright or performer to have a very tangible sense of that audience sitting in the space in the dark and what they're thinking and feeling as they're showcasing their beautiful craft, as you said. So can you talk about a time, you know, it might be the shadow puppetry, but I'm guessing it's probably through your gardening and all of the various projects and programs that you're involved in. But when you felt really strongly connected to people through your work, how did that feel for you?
The way it feels for me, and I'm having a number of memories come to mind, is that I feel very connected and part of the thing, part of the activity. So it's not me presenting, performing, delivering, managing. It's just me part of the thing. And I think that's a really nice thing, because a lot of my work is about how can we collectively work together towards a greater good, and that doesn't involve a hierarchy of people going, okay, you do this, you do that. It involves a structure of us, a flat structure, if you like, going, okay, this is how we can turn up together. And so for me, that's been absolutely a lot of community-based gardening activities where we create things together. A lot of things where I've come into a community with a certain agenda that's been given to me or we've created, but then I love watching it completely change. I'm like, I was like, rolled out. I was like, oh, that's nice. But usually it's like that's strong feedback, things are working. And I'm like, oh, that's so cool. And so you can come in with guiding dot points knowing that they're going to shift and move. And I just love that. So I think there's some of the biggest feelings that stick with me. Is like, oh, this is a thing that we do together. Who knows what's going to happen, but it's going to be good.
A real openness to seeing where it might go or where it lands.
And it took me a minute to work out that was actually okay and actually right. I'm like, oh, but we're not following the thing.
Yes. the
vision, you know? It's like, actually, that's the whole idea.
Yes. That is a really wonderful approach. And as I said, you know, I think that there's lots of kind of really well-trained and incredible artists who perhaps could think about, you know, the very tangible impact that an audience member or a viewer or a listener is feeling at the time of engaging with their work. I wanted to dig into what's occupying your thoughts right now. What worries you, or what makes you really happy and hopeful at the moment? Do you religiously follow the news, or how are you feeling in the world?
Yeah, look, I am very politically engaged, and I used to be obsessively engaged, especially around things around the climate emergency. These days, I don't read every climate science report. I don't read every nitty bitty bit of detail, because it's actually quite depressing.
It's hard, isn't it?
And it turns out, after I've been paying attention for 2+ decades, it turns out the science is still quite bad. It's getting worse, and I understand that. I don't need to keep rereading and re-experiencing those sad things. So I absolutely stay abreast of the headlines, and I read any new information in detail. But my particular strategy is to go, okay, I'm not going to dwell on the problem, I'm going to dwell on the solution.
Yes.
So we understand things are not great. What are we going to do about it? So that's where I hang out. But things that occupy my thoughts is, what else can I do? That's the question. And that's there's two sides to that question. One of them is absolutely interesting, and I'm full of curiosity. I'm like, oh, what else can I do? And that's quite exciting. And the other side,
hopeful.
and hopeful.
Yes.
Yeah. The other side is like, oh, mate, what else can you do? You're not doing enough.
Yes.
And I have to be really careful to flip that, to go, actually, where's the hope, where's the joy? Because that's what actually leads to action.
Yes.
When I'm over in the other side, it leads to apathy and anxiety. So don't get anxious, get active is a popular saying. So that's what's really in my thoughts. And but I have to counter it with really different activities. So gardening's, it's all related, but it's very different. Reading books or watching telly, which has nothing to do with anything.
Bit of fantasy.
So I have to, because we're not here to be switched on and working or on task the whole time. We're here to live our lives, and if we're lucky enough to be as privileged as we are in Australia, then I think we can remember that we can use that privilege towards good, and always weave love and joy into everything we're doing, because that's why we're here, and that's what's going to keep us going. Otherwise we can burn out.
Absolutely. Yeah, keep us going and keep us connected as human beings as well. I'm really interested in the politically active space that you found yourself in. Did that come through your university study years, or how did you find your way into that world?
So when I finished high school, I couldn't find a university degree that was really hitting
what you were
the
after.
nail on the head for me. So I was very politically engaged even as a young teenager. I was like, why does so much in our world feel so wrong? I could not find a degree that answered that question. So I went to Self-Education University.
Tell me about it.
3 years on the road. This was before the internet was available to me, so the early 2000s. And so I would go to places like Woomera Detention Centre, where refugees were previously held, since closed. I would go to forest blockades. I would go to different social and environmental issues. I'll go and see the thing and experience it and learn about it. Because mainstream media, my thought was, I don't think we're seeing the whole story here. And turns out that was correct.
Absolutely.
And so I spent 3 years really throwing myself on the front line activist world. It was a lot of locking on, climbing up tree sits, a lot of police activity, all that kind of thing. And I'm such a big supporter of frontline activism. And I think there's many, many different types of activism. And it turns out, I was like, I can't do this forever. I kept getting tired, burnt out, very stressed. And I was like, what's my form of activism that I can do forever? And so there's lots of experimentation in there. Community cultural development, I think, is really valuable. It identifies problems and it goes, what's the solution with that community? And for me, permaculture, organic gardening is very much my medium of going, okay, what can I do forever? And how can it be used to create change in a positive way? So I see this as my form of activism, and I'm constantly linking it back to the climate emergency and climate solutions. More importantly, that's where you'll find me. And so activism is a lifelong commitment for me. It's not something I do when I did when I was younger or just on the weekend. It's like, no, it's going to change and morph as I grow older, and that's wonderful. The main thing is that I keep doing it. And
that also really reminds me of art and artists. And, you know, I think that is a form of activism, at least very much in that messaging space, but also in that hope space that you're talking about as well. Yeah. You know, it really does cross over quite strongly.
Absolutely. I think art, like, you look back on some of our biggest kind of historical social movements in particular, but all environmental movements, there's like, I get really strong images of different art that's been representative of that time, and that maybe that's performance art or visual art. Like it's like these incredible moments that capture the sentiments of that time.
Yes.
It's like and freeze them. It's like, oh, amazing.
Yeah. Is there anything in particular that jumps to mind?
Well, like being in Lutruwita, Tasmania, things that come to mind. Over a decade now, in the Weld Valley, which is a forest, a blockade, and a lovely activist called Alana Beltrain climbed up a tripod and dressed up as a white angel with these giant wings. And it ended up in the New York Times, I think, went very, very international. The image was amazing by like a photographer, but it just captured decades and decades of forest activism and was used as a conversation starter still to this day. Another one with the nuclear movement in Australia is a older activist. Can only remember his first name, which is Benji. But he would dress up in a mask and a nuclear kind of performative costume on top of these barrels of pretend nuclear waste. And he was just iconic for like probably a decade. That was the image of the nuclear campaign. And all these things I just kind of can draw on and go, wow, how powerful.
So powerful.
So powerful, yeah.
And that, you know, those images stay with you for such a long time.
Oh, absolutely. They make such an impression.
Yeah, it's incredible, isn't it? I'd love to know, you know, what you're reading or what you're listening to right now, whether it's in this space or whether it's more to just relax and enjoy.
Yeah, something I'm listening to is a weekly podcast called Big Small Talk by two women, Hannah Ferguson and Sarah. I'm sorry, Sarah, I can't remember your last name.
We can look it up.
And it's two young Australian women, and they're just kicking it. So I think their tagline for that podcast is something about, like, you know, liking politics doesn't mean that you don't like pop culture. But they say it better. But it's a weekly podcast where they summarise that week's happenings globally in popular culture, but also politics. And it's very clever. Like, they're both like 25-ish, and they're just going, this is what Kim Kardashian's doing. And also, here's the latest tax reform laws in Australia. I'm so
linking Kim Kardashian and tax. That's amazing.
Yeah. I think it's very savvy in engaging younger people in the news cycle, and just also remembering that life is just full of weird and wonderful, wacky stuff, and who cares and whatever, you know. So I'm really enjoying listening to that, and I'm actively listening to more music because I don't listen to news all the time. I listen to news every day, but I switch over to music. And that's a really beautiful thing.
Do you have a particular genre that you love?
Oh, mate, you'll find me listening to like some heavy hip hop over to beautiful African lullabies. Yeah. And then sometimes Dolly Parton and Johnny Cash creeps in.
I love that. I have a very similar eclectic taste in music.
Very eclectic.
And it's just how you feel in the moment, isn't it?
Yeah,
that's
totally.
really beautiful.
Yeah.
I'd like to think about 10 days on the island now, and I was wondering if you could share what your experience has been of obviously, you know, this festival that's been around here for over 20 years now, and has had a real impact on this place.
So my experiences have been quite varied. Like because when I first came to contact it some years ago now, I just didn't quite realise how island-based it was. I was like, oh, yeah, Hobart, Launceston, cool, maybe Burnie.
Yeah.
But I'd like risk bump into regional towns. Like, oh, we're just in a regional town now. Like, and how much the festival integrates into the actual community.
Yes.
Like, it's very integrated, and I just love that. So my experiences have been very much like the small towns where pop-up things happen, and then of course it washes through Hobart, and it's like, oh, this is gorgeous current that just kind of moves around the island.
That's a really beautiful way to describe it in terms of a current, whether that's water or air, but, you know, that it finds its way, reaches out across the island.
I think that's its strength. So it means I have, you know, I don't see everything, obviously, but I see the things I see are of that place, and it's very unique. It's like, wow, that's pretty cool.
Is there a particular event that you can remember?
Look, I think nothing in particular comes to mind. There's more that the ones that I remember more strongly is where the community has been really involved. And so that's been like choir-based different performances where suddenly, oh yeah, I'm in the choir. Oh, I can be in a choir. It's like everyone's on board.
Well, it taps into that creativity that you were talking about. All of a sudden, and people feel the freedom or the permission to find that within themselves.
How wonderful. Yeah,
and
so
I guess to be inspired by the incredible artists around them as well. It's quite magical, isn't it?
It's the best.
Yeah. We're so excited to be working with you. And I guess as you're thinking about, you know, the project, the event, the experience that you want to create with us for the next 10 days, what kind of feeling or legacy do you want to leave with people around your event? I know that's important to you.
Yeah, totally. So the themes that I would love to be exploring are around the climate emergency, First Nations culture, celebrating that beautiful culture, and then our amazing island. And so I'd like to be weaving some threads between those in a really solution-orientated, celebratory way. And so the things that I would like to be engaging are people's heads, hearts and hands, and to do some artwork through a range of mediums, whether that's working with the earth, working with people's maybe potentially singing, and some kind of visual art as well, which draws on conversations that I would like to be having with people about how they want to be in this world and what is important to them. And so the legacy that I hope it leaves behind is that people remember that what is most important in how we are in this world is the connections we make with people and with place. And that's not just Hannah making stuff up. It's based on decades of people talking to people around these issues. And I think there's some incredible threads that we can draw out there and bring to life based on what people are saying.
That sounds extraordinary. So if there was one feeling or action or thought or several even that you wanted people to have while they're experiencing the work or to take away with them, what would it be?
I think it's the feeling that I have is that it's one of empowerment and deep connection where there's so much possibility that bubbles to the surface. And it's one that leads to action. We don't know what that action is yet, but there is an action there that people go, I'm going to do a thing now. And who knows what that might be, but it's going to be good.
That's so inspiring. That's so inspiring. Well, I have to say thank you so much for sharing with us more about you, who you are, not just as a gardener and an artist, but who you are as a person.
Thanks, Marnie.
Thank you for coming on board as one of our 10 artists with 10 days on the island. And we can't wait to check back with you as this beautiful idea emerges and unfolds.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Thanks for joining us on Starter for 10. If you'd like to know more about what's coming up at 10 Days on the Island, visit www.10days.org.au and subscribe to our free newsletter.